Hey there, Heather Van Wild, Raindrop Works. We are still a few minutes early, but when I'm worried about other people's technical equipment or this kind of stuff, I want to make sure that I get the chance to make sure all of my stuff is working first. Test 1, 2. Test 1. Oi. Hello. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Okay. I am missing my... it'll work. So yeah, we are waiting for event to start in about 10 minutes. Oh. Okay, they have changed the window. Apparently, I don't know why I test the screen and everything when I have to change it 3 times between starting my stream and them starting theirs. Nope, not that. This is what I want. How did that get in the background? There we go. What did I just do? Oh, good grief. There. Yeah, I suspect that they're doing a very limited time on letting people into the meeting because we had a lot of problems with Zoom bombing last time. But I also have concerns that they're talking about only letting people in for 5 minutes. Yeah, last time I think they started a couple minutes late letting people in, and a lot of people showed up after that first 5 minutes. That's the part I never like, because I'm not very good with small talk. So slow. I should look at fixing the viewer counter while this is going on. Yeah. I'm at 6 o'clock on the nose. Oh my god. No, not that. I am trying to get the actual call connected. Maybe having issues here. Okay, window capture. I will be adjusting this once we actually get started. Those dings are from the Zoom chat, not from me.
Well, by my clock, I have about 4 minutes after the hour. I'm going to ask Chief Goldberg to just do a quick intro. Chief?
Thank you, Michelle. And again, welcome everybody to tonight's forum. This is the third forum we've held in our work, our ongoing work with the comprehensive assessment we're doing on the police department with our partners at Very Done. So I am very encouraged already by the amount of participation we've had, both from the forum and as we will remind you, there's an online component to this where you can provide feedback and questions. So we encourage you to participate in that as well. With that said, I always talk too much, so I'm going to leave lots of opportunity for you. So It is once again my pleasure to introduce my colleagues from Barry Dunn, Michelle and Fred, and they will do a little bit of introduction themselves and get you started on the parameters for tonight and the work that needs to get done. So again, thank you to everybody for your participation and helping us be better and ensuring the police department meets your expectations and your values. And so to that, Michelle, take it over. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And you may notice that the chief is going to leave the meeting, and that's by design. We're trying to create a safe space for everybody to be part of this conversation. And so to that end, we're going to we've asked him to just come and do a quick intro and then kind of let the conversation flow from there. Again, my name is Michelle Weinzettel, and I am a manager at Barry Dunn. My background is in policing, municipal policing. I spent 27 years as an officer and 17 years as a police chief in Minnesota. And I've also been doing these kind of studies for about 6.5 years in places all over the country. Many of, I'm sure you would have heard of, but obviously I work for Barry Dunn, and my colleague with me today is Fred Fletcher, and he'll probably do a quick hello.
Trouble with the technology here. Hey, Fred Fletcher. It's nice to meet you all. I am a recovering chief of police, career police officer from Austin, and then a chief of police in Texas and Tennessee. And I've done a lot of work in building community engagement and addressing violence against women, gender bias, and related issues, and supporting agencies' efforts to improve their response to victims. And I've worked with a lot of local advocacy organizations, having served as the president of the board of our local Latino advocacy organization for many years in Chattanooga. And I'm glad to be here with y'all.
Perfect. Thanks, Fred. So just want to real quickly talk a little bit about the meeting tonight. Obviously, first of all, I want to echo the chief's comment. Thank you very much for joining us and being part of the forum. The purpose for this meeting really is to solicit community input about the Gresham Police Department as part of the operations and management assessment that Barry Dunn is conducting for the city of Gresham and the Gresham Police Department. And of course, we welcome all constructive feedback and positive comments, but we are just going to ask that you be cordial in your remarks, try to be fairly brief in your comments so that there's enough time for others to speak. And just to add a couple of little pieces to the framework here. First of all, this is an open forum and we're interested in feedback from you, but this really isn't a debate. So we're interested in your comments, but really not replies to other people's comments. So we're going to ask that people be respectful and not comment on the comments of others, but keep your own comments, present only your own comments. Couple of other things to know. If you want to speak, you can enter your name into the chat. If you do that, we will watch the chat and call on people by name. You can just put your first name and last initial in the chat. Please keep your microphones off if you are not speaking. And if you do end up speaking, we're going to ask that you mute yourself again when you're all done. Again, we're asking people to speak openly and honestly. We are not recording this forum, and we are not going to be recording any names or anything like that. Again, our goal really is to hear various points of view and experiences, all of which we find very valuable to this process. I do want to just say quickly that we understand that there are overarching social issues right now facing our country as it relates to municipal law enforcement or law enforcement in general. And while we understand the need for those conversations, we're really trying to focus this particular forum on information specific to the Gresham Police Department. That is, things that you might want to tell us about that they do really well, or things that you might tell us that you feel they should consider or improve on in terms of the way that they currently serve the community. So we'll ask you to try to keep that in mind as you form your comments and provide those. Again, as far as the chat's concerned, please keep your use of the chat only to putting your name in if you want to speak. We're asking that you not use the chat opportunity to either say how great you think someone's comment was or how awful you think it was. Just don't comment on other people's comments. I think I said that enough. So again, we do really want to hear from everyone and hear your perspectives. Again, I will just say that, you know, in the unfortunate circumstance that someone's disruptive, we will remove the person from the meeting. I'm hopeful that doesn't have to happen. So with that said, we are right at, we're at time, we're ready to go, and we have a number of folks here. I do not see any names in the chat just yet, but this would be an appropriate time to add your name to the chat if there's something that you'd like to contribute to the conversation. And I see that Ed has put his name in. So Ed, please feel free to share. You will need to unmute, Ed. There you go.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ed Chen. It's a pleasure to address everyone today. I'm a proud Chinese American, small business owner, and also an outdoor practitioner. East County is where I've called my home for over 40 years, and Gresham is my home. It's where I've decided to raise my kids. I've worked, volunteered, and I've chosen to locate my small business here. Despite the national and regional unease, Gresham has weathered the COVID chaos and looked inward to embracing our values of community, connection, and courage. One enduring theme we've seen throughout the pandemic is the resilience and dedication, specifically from our men and women of law enforcement. Sudden and steady increases in violent crimes, theft, disrespect for property, and unlawful acts has us all concerned in Gresham about our city. Unfortunately, we don't want to see Gresham rise in the list of national averages, becoming a city that rates high on the list. Rather than, we would rather see our city become still a viable and livable city. My unique life experiences as a minority, a father, and a business owner in East County gives me a unique perspective on a lot of these issues that I've seen through the media and also in life in our community, as I'm an active member of the community. We've seen a lot of violent crimes disproportionately affect a lot of areas of Gresham and a lot of our other surrounding communities. And it has also affected, I think, a lot of our law enforcement agencies as well. Unfortunately, just like COVID, it is, I think, handicapped a lot of our community services. Myself and others of Gresham, we've created a coalition called GUS, looking to try and help law enforcement put more badges and boots on the ground. I believe we desperately need more officers. Our law enforcement are understaffed and our officers are overworked. Our coalition is here to support better training, increase support staff, community programming, mental health services, and beyond. I want to see a safer and more inclusive city that adequately has a model of 21st century policing that everyone has been talking about. I don't think this can wait. I think immediate funding is necessary. We're aware of activities that are taking place in the Bureau and in the city, and it's great for a short-term, maybe long-term goals to try and help policing, but I feel that there's a bigger issue here and we need to take a big step forward as November 2022 is approaching. I feel that we have to address the funding need of our community and of the police force. It's necessary that we have something put on the ballot measure in order to have the voters be able to adequately fund this and vote on this. I don't think it can wait. It's got to be done, and it needs immediate attention and of everyone there. I want to have our city safe. I want to see it protected. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Appreciate the comments. The next person I see is Dana.
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah, I want to echo Ed's comments about the need for 21st century policing reform and an increase in social services and inclusion. Also, I want to thank you for the opportunity for opening up this virtual space for us to share. I have two brief comments. First, I hope that you have a process for receiving public comment with an equity lens, recognizing that Black and Brown voices have been systematically oppressed and silenced in many of these conversations historically, not specific to Gresham. Two comments I want to make here. First, I ask the city to incentivize alternatives to armed police as part of a fundamental reimagining of public safety. I propose that our city establish some sort of division of community of human services or within the police department, which would focus on a more expansive lens of community safety using non-carceral and non-punitive perspectives, one that treats community safety as a matter of public health. I ask the city to divest from the systems that harm BIPOC people and instead invest in our communities through education, through health, housing, infrastructure, environmental justice, and economic justice. We need a transformational paradigm shift about how resources in communities and not carceral systems in order to keep our people safe. It is my belief that vulnerable populations, we will have less violence. I want to see us paying attention to vulnerable populations and houseless people. Paying attention to people is a form of showing respect for them, and not paying attention to them is a way of disrespecting them. We have been disrespecting our neighbors for far too long, and I think that during this pandemic, it has become increasingly clear that the disparities that we have among us are at a breaking point. We can show that we care by using some of our ARPA funds to create intentional programs that give financial support to our neighbors in need. And I think a division of community safety is one way that we could do that. Secondly, I hear the continued call by our Gresham students against oppression to remove all police from our school campuses. Since the police officer was removed from Gresham High, I heard from the superintendent through his email that the officer is now providing training concerning. After hearing that the same individual was removed due to their discriminatory practices, he should not be training anyone. His contract needs to be removed entirely. Student voices that we heard from Gresham High School are joined in this same position by organizations that include March for Our Lives and the American Civil Liberties Union. Having police officers in school is not supported by research that does not create safer schools. Instead, resources like counseling, librarians, nurses, supportive services, and smaller classes are the things that save lives. Our youth need mental health support resources more than police. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thanks, Dana. Appreciate the comments. And just to kind of respond to one of the things that you said, we are certainly interested and soliciting all voices to contribute to the process. As the chief mentioned, this is our third meeting. We had one in-person meeting. We had a prior open forum that was done virtually a couple of weeks ago. This meeting was supposed to be in person, but obviously due to COVID issues, we've had to revert to a virtual forum. I will say that again, and I think the chief kind of mentioned this, there is a social pinpoint website which has substantial content about this project, and there are opportunities there for people to ask questions or to provide input. This is anonymous input, so for those folks who have been traditionally marginalized or may have issues with or be concerned about or have trust issues with coming forward and being part of an open conversation, there are ways to provide information through the social pinpoint site. So I definitely would encourage people to, if you have not gone there, to go there. I would also encourage anyone on the call that if there are other people that you know that you think may have something to contribute, please feel free to let them know to visit the social pinpoint site as well. We will be doing having additional conversations and surveys and fact-finding information throughout the project as it goes on for the next few months. So again, just appreciate everybody lending their voice. And again, for those that are here tonight. So I think we have Heather. Yep. Okay. Appreciate that. Let's see. Anyone else wish to speak? Any comments at all? It's going to be a really short meeting. No one? Does anyone have any questions about the process at this point?
Yeah, I have a question, Michelle.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dana.
Can you speak to how the police department is handling racism within their ranks? What kind of trainings or practices have occurred in the last year or two?
That's a great question. So I can tell you that we have not assessed the training yet, and I do know that it was Heather, I think, that was talking about some of the things going on in Portland. We do look at the different training that is being provided. We have not done that so far, so I can't answer that question directly. I will tell you that part of our process is to evaluate the extent to which the department has policies or practices that demonstrate the value of DEI, whether it's in specific policies like impartial policing policies, and again, as it relates to the various trainings that they do, but we haven't looked at the specific numbers of hours or types of training that they've gone to just yet. And Ed, you asked about the process, and I don't know, I didn't really talk about it much in this forum. For anyone who's not really kind of familiar with what's going on here, Barry Dunn was hired by the city to do an operations and management study of the police department. And that study really crosses every operational category that you might think about for a police department. Everything from policy, communication, leadership, culture, hiring, recruiting, retention, professional standards, media, community outreach, community policing, everything that you might imagine that is involved in police operations. We are looking at and and are going to assess organizationally from a best practices perspective for the police department. So, and to what extent they're complying with best practices. Our process involves a number of layers. We do internal interviews with staff. We do interviews with external stakeholders, community members. Again, we're soliciting input through the social pinpoint site. Obviously, we're soliciting input through open forums like this one. The police department will be producing a large amount of data to us, which we will be looking at and analyzing. In addition to the around 50 or so interviews that we've already done, there will be some additional interviews that we will do from a follow-up perspective. And all of that information then is, again, examined in context against your own environment, but then also against industry best practices to look for any gaps in practice within the organization and areas where there might need to be a revision. At this point, the project is expected to finish right around June, somewhere in that time frame. We'll know more as time goes on. But the document, the final document, will be a public document. It will ultimately be presented to council, and it will be available for the public to review. And we will obviously post it where the city indicates to post it, but we typically post a copy of that report on the social pinpoint site, which members of the public can then download and review or read or whatever you like to do. So that's just kind of a quick overview. There's, as you might imagine, there's a lot of pieces and parts to that. So, and the data analysis piece is a big one, and that does take a fair amount of time to go through all of those items. So, and I think, Mark, you have your hand up.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, okay. Hey, I was just wondering, speaking of the data, I was wondering if there's a estimated time frame when your evaluations and all will be available.
Well, as I said, the entire process takes roughly 7 months, give or take. We are also in the midst of doing some additional work with the police department on some of the pressing issues. We're expecting the final report to be delivered to the city in June, maybe July, just depending upon timing and how everything pans out from a sequence standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions? And I saw a couple people did join late. So if they're, again, we're trying to keep the context here about positive comments or items about things to improve for the Gresham Police Department. If you would like to make a comment, please put your first name and last initial in the chat, and we will call on you in sequence. And somebody asked a question. How can you speak to how you encourage cultural change if you were to discover issues here at the city? That's a really great question. And as you know, the very notion of culture is that it's embedded within the practices and policies and philosophies of the organization. So when we talk about culture, if an organization wanted to make a change in culture, the path obviously is to identify the appropriate cultural elements and then to develop training and reinforcing and embedding mechanisms within various processes that the police department engages to reiterate and to communicate on a consistent basis what the new culture is, to track and hold people accountable for that new culture. So there certainly are processes to doing that. And but again, there are a lot of steps to it, and it does take a fair amount of effort to not only re-envision what that culture ought to be, but then to take the steps to embed that into the culture in a way that it becomes a cultural norm. So I know that's kind of vague, but it's a little bit of a vague topic, but it's a big topic, but it is something that we will look at as an overall, as part of our overall project, is looking at the whole climate and culture of the police department and identify any issues that we see or gaps. Other questions or comments?
Sure, I have another one.
Okay.
Within the city of Gresham right now, what attempts are there to ensure that patrol cars have at least one person of color when they're patrolling neighborhoods that are?
Dana, I'm not sure if you know this, but your mic's been cutting in and out. I heard that you started to say what attempts are being made about something about the patrol cars, but that's all I heard.
Oh, sorry about my internet there. My kids are probably on the iPad downstairs, sucking up all the juice. What attempts are there to ensure that patrol cars have at least one person of color when they're patrolling neighborhoods that are predominantly inhabited by people of color?
Well, I can't speak to the specifics of the city. I can tell you that generally, most police organizations don't have the luxury of selecting who's going to patrol which areas. Now, having said that, there is one of the pieces that we look at is the overall diversity of the police force, whether that diversity level is representative of the community, and what efforts the police department and or the city are taking to encourage diversity within the organization, not only from a recruiting standpoint, but from leadership development, personnel development throughout the organization. So that is, again, most organizations are not in a position to be able to selectively determine which officers are going to respond. I will also tell you that we do not have the full data at this point, but at least anecdotally and based on what we've been able to tell so far and from community forums and various interviews, the police department is very busy being in a reactive mode, which is making it a challenge for them to do much self-directed patrols in the first place. So there are some pieces we'll look at, and we're going to dig deeper into that data, and that's one of the reasons that it takes so long. But anyway, that's probably the best answer I can give you. And Mark, did you have another question, or did we just not get your hand back down?
Yes, I had another one. Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yep.
I was wondering if this time frame, does that mean that with the severe need we have for additional officers, does that have to wait for that time frame also?
That's a really, really good question. No, the short answer is no. And one of the parts of our process that is, we think is kind of important is early in the project, we developed something called an emergent issues memo. And that is, as we start the process of evaluating an agency, oftentimes we see things that are happening within the organization that really call out for attention. And in the larger picture, those things would not make sense to defer for 5 or 6 months to wait until we're completed with the project. So we have been in that process with the police department. We're having conversations about those items that we've identified early on. And we're actually working with them to set up a game plan to attack some of those pieces again, sooner than later, because again, as you mentioned, there are some things that really do call for some more immediate attention.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I saw A question about mental health checkups. How often do patrol officers get mental health checkups? Are they taught to look for signs of internal stress or agitation? What happens with stressed out officers? What happens when one officer is concerned with another officer's behavior? There's about 4 different things in there, but the first thing is that police departments are typically set up with what we call early warning systems. Those are mechanisms that track officers' behaviors and like tardism or sick leave and those types of things to watch for patterns or any types of combination of patterns which might be hinting at some officer wellness component. And those officers are typically either forwarded directly to a mental health service, or usually there are anonymous resources available through the community, through the city, to do those kinds of things. Obviously, when an officer, if another officer is behaving poorly, there are policies within the professional standards policy that call for officers or allow for officers to file complaints internally if the officer's behavior is at that level, or if it's just someone that's concerned about their behavior. That's something that certainly could be routed through a supervisor or human resources or something along those lines. That's a typical process. As far as regular mental health checks, most police agencies do not have a specific standard for that, and there are some legal pieces that surround standardized mental health timelines to do checkups of that nature. But certainly when there is an issue that is raised, the typical process is for a police agency to respond and put the officer in touch with resources that are available. So other comments specific about Gresham, about things that you'd like to see with the police department, things the police department does really well, your observations, areas that you think you'd like to see them dedicate more time or energy? Anybody else? So when I used to teach classes a lot, I used to tell people this is the interactive portion of the program. So this is really, again, I mean, I appreciate everybody being here, but this really is an opportunity for you to share some thoughts. So Sue, thanks for chiming in. What do you have?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts, and they're kind of hard to put into words. I really feel concerned about all of the emergency responders, medical, police, fire, health workers. We're just in a really tough time right now, and I think that people are so divided. I heard the comment earlier about the school resource officer. I don't have children in school, so I don't have any personal experience with that, but I do remember the Reynolds High School active shooter. And as I recall, the school resource officer and a football coach, I believe, helped stop that incident. And unfortunately, one young man was killed by the shooter. But it was on the news, and it was quite the thing to see because it was so organized. They were getting the kids out. They took them down to the Fred Meyer parking lot in buses. I mean, these school drills. And so that was very impressive. And, we're really, unfortunately, we see a lot of these school shootings. And so that's something I think about that I'm sure is a concern to some parents. And I don't know the situation that was mentioned before about the Gresham SRO. And I'm sure that will go through whatever channels it needs to. for some sort of outcome. But I feel like a lot of the emergency responders there's just all these society woes, and they can't solve all of them. And I think that people, we all need to work in our own communities and be more thoughtful to others and try to help others who are having difficult times, and we have our work cut out for ourselves. So I guess those are some of my thoughts. Regarding the Gresham Police Department, we live out here on the eastern edge of Gresham, and we've had different situations out here in the past several years where the police have come out on different situations, and I feel like they've, paid the right amount of attention to different issues that have gone on. And but I do feel like we definitely need more funding, and I'm certainly in support of that, and I hope that we can get some financial stability in our city. And so basically those are my comments and thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Thanks for adding that. Mary, or Mary's iPad. Not sure who wants to visit with us, but go ahead. Whoever has Mary's iPad, if you're trying to talk, we can't hear you. Okay. Anyone else? Any other comments? Well, I think, first of all, I want to say again, I appreciate everybody being here and sharing what you have. I would also say, a lot of times people come into these meetings and they're curious. They want to hear comments of others. They want to kind of hear what's going on. And it's not uncommon for people to be sitting in these meetings and have some thoughts that they'd like to share, but maybe they're reluctant to do so within the meeting. And that's just fine. Again, what I would encourage you to do then is to look for the Social Pinpoint site. You can go to the city's website to find it. Again, on that site, there is an opportunity for you to enter. You can ask questions on that site about the project. There's also project information that outlines kind of what we're doing with the project. And also, if you have specific comments that you want to leave about the Gresham Police Department, there's an opportunity to do that, to talk about the things the department does well, or things that you might like to see them improve on or do better with. And I see a couple people saying thanks for the space. Obviously, this is very important. And again, the pesky COVID has really caused us a lot of challenges. We obviously prefer to do this face to face, but I do appreciate all of you taking some time out of your evening to spend with us. And again, I just encourage everyone to take the time to go out to the Social Pinpoint site. And as I was stalling, my colleague Sasha has added the website to the chat. So if you have a moment, you might want to just capture that website before you leave the meeting. And that way you can visit that site, and kind of there's what you'll see there is various information about the project. And then again, those opportunities to provide additional feedback. I would also say there will be other surveys and opportunities to provide feedback going forward. So even if you have visited the site or you visited tonight, I would encourage you to come back and check it every week or so to see if there's any new content or any new opportunities for you to participate in the process. And I would also, again, encourage anyone on this call, if there are people that you think may have information that would be helpful to add their voice to this process, I would encourage you to go ahead and copy that link to Social Pinpoint and send that along to them, and suggest that they add their comments there and or look for other opportunities to participate. So with that, I will just say once again, thanks very much for being here, everyone. I see there's a comment for what it's worth. I've been practically begging people, you know what, and we get that people are busy and there's a lot of these different kind of meetings going on. So we do know that people are busy with lots of things. And at the same time, that's one of the reasons Social Pinpoint is great, because you can do it at your leisure. It doesn't have to be at a specific point in time. So again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but we certainly appreciate everybody being here tonight. We appreciate your comments and look forward to connecting with you as we go forward with this very important project. So thanks very much. Good night.
Obviously, less beating dead horse and more issues with beating protesters. That said, Gresham doesn't have the variety of protest-related stuff that Portland does. I will admit that openly. Gresham is ideologically more conservative than Portland. It's a smaller city. It's where people who are tired of the liberalism of Portland tend to move to first before they go out of the area. But I can say that I have seen some protest-related events that have happened in Gresham where I've had concerns about the way that they were handled. But hopefully, you know, things are able to be looked at with this. I have concerns about the bias of the group that's doing this, but I'm desperately hoping to be proven wrong. That said, I didn't really want to dig into too much other stuff. You know, on this stream here, I still have other stuff that I'm trying to work on. You know, real life stuff that's been rearing its ugly head, and I'm trying to get content ready to go out to everyone to you know, get more info, get more engagement, things like that. In the meantime, though, I'm going to go ahead and hang things up for the night. This has been Heather Van Wild with Raindrop Works.